كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. أما بعد، سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. آمين يا رب العالمين. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, we send salutations upon our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the best of this world and hereafter, and looks after the Muslimun of the world, grants us also His pleasure and beneficial knowledge. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. So today what we'll be doing is we'll be running over some of the commonly asked questions, modern questions regarding zakat that haven't yet been covered. So we'll go through firstly regarding when calculating the value of gold. So which rate do you go by? What rate do you go by when you're calculating gold? Is it the sale value, buy value? What is it? So we'll discuss that first. Then we'll go through the zakat on 9-carat gold. Is 9-carat gold zakatable? So we will go through that insha'Allah. We'll also go through regarding, is a person allowed to delay the payment of zakat, or is it obligatory immediately? Then we will discuss whether zakat is due on haram wealth or not. And then we will also discuss regarding the different types of debts. So we'll go through I will discuss and I will explain the different types of debts. When a person owes you a debt, how is it calculated in your zakat or not? Do you pay zakat on it? And then we will also discuss regarding if you owe debts to other people, then which debts are deductible, which you do not have to pay zakat on, in essence. Then we'll also discuss whether a husband is allowed to give zakat on behalf of his wife or anybody else, or is anyone allowed to give zakat on behalf of anybody else, in essence. We'll also go through the ruling of zakat on shares, and I will explain how to calculate zakat on shares insha'Allah. And I think that will be enough for today. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So now the first mas'ala is regarding, do we consider when we are trying to work out the gold value, do we consider the value, the sale value, or the buying value, the value that you would buy it at? So obviously you consider the value that you would sell it at. So the value of the gold you currently have is the value of the sale value, right? How much you would be able to sell this gold for. So whatever the sale value is, that's the value of your gold. So that's the value that you would consider when you are calculating your zakat. Now, if a person wants to go by the buying value, which is generally going to be higher, right? Because the value that you're going to buy at is going to be higher than the value that you can sell it at. So if somebody wants to take the buying value because it's easy to work out, because you can go online and check it quickly, then that's fine, absolutely fine. A lot of people do take the buying value because it's higher anyway. So that is no problem. The next mas'ala we will go on to is regarding 9-carat gold. So the question is 9-carat gold zakatable? So the more popular fatwa regarding 9-carat gold is because 9-carat gold it contains less than 40% gold. So anything which is in the books written, anything which was mixed with an alloy, any gold jewelry or silver jewelry which was mixed with an alloy, and the alloy was more than the gold content or the silver content, then there was no zakat payable on such jewelry. So this is something that was mentioned, or any on that gold basis, because it's been dominated. So that's what was written, and according to that, the popular fatwa was always given that 9-carat gold, because it's dominated, it's less than 40%, let alone 50% gold. So it's less than 40% gold. So therefore there would be no zakat on it. However, when we look into the text of the fuqaha, of the Hanafi fuqaha who have written regarding this concept of what something overpowering the gold, what they do say, they make a condition that as long as the gold cannot be separated, as long as the gold cannot be separated, then you consider the gold to be dominated by the alloy. Now, according to some scholars, they comment with these kind of general texts which mention just separable. So they understand this to be, you can actually physically separate it. So therefore, if it's something and the gold is on the end and you can physically separate the gold, then that is zakatable, even if it's dominated, if the rest of it is a lot more. But when we look further, you see that there are clear texts that mention that the gold can be separated by melting, by burning, by heating it. If the gold can be separated by heating it, or for example, if I translate for you a text mentioned by Allama ibn Nujaym, mentioned in Bahr al-Ra'iq, volume 6, page 200, and in the Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya, if it's that particular copy, then volume 6, page 334, he mentions the difference between gold and silver, which is dominated, is actually the difference between, when gold and silver is actually dominated by something as opposed to when it's dominated and it cannot be separated, he says. So is that the gold is actually found in reality in the actual weight of that gold or silver item, or in terms of you being able to take out the gold from it by melting it. Because they can be separated by melting, he says. By heating, by melting, you will be able to separate the gold and silver. So therefore the gold and silver are actually found in reality. They are found in that jewelry, as well as in ruling. They are found in that jewelry, in terms of ruling wise, in terms of what we will rule them to be, because they can be separated. So he says, they clearly says that they will be considered in the nisab of zakat. In this nisab, it will be considered. And here actually he mentions, as opposed to when the alloy is so dominant that if it is burnt, meaning if it's melted, the jewelry is melted, the gold will be destroyed, meaning it will just disintegrate. The gold you will not be able to, like if it's gold plated, for instance, right? You can understand if you try melting that to try to extract the gold, then most likely the gold will become ruined, disintegrate. A lot of it will not be able to be separated. So now that is dominated. That you can say is definitely dominated by the alloy, and the gold is inseparable in essence. Okay, obviously everything is separable to a degree if you try to apply the processes, but it has to be a process which is available to all. So there are many texts that present this. You've got text in Al-Jawharatun Nayyara, volume 1, 158, and he mentions also the same thing, that if the gold is found in the goods that's there, by burning. He uses the word burning, obviously meaning melting, and it can be separable by that, then it will be, that's the condition. In fact, he mentions that with the condition, when will you not consider it to be gold, is in the condition that it can't be separable by thing. But if it can be separated, then it will be considered part of the nisab. So he says, as for if it can be separated, in essence, by it will be nisab, and zakat will be wajib, will be necessary on that. So there are various texts that clearly mention that if it can be separated, then zakat will be due. Now, as I said, the process has to be something which is, process of separating has to be something which is available to the masses, to the normal public. And if you phone the jewelers, like we did, we phoned the jewelers and we find out that actually this separating out the gold is actually something which they can do, and it's an inexpensive process available to everybody. If you go to the jeweler and you take your jewelry, they will take your jewelry in, they will separate out the gold, and then they will make whatever you want from that gold. So they could take your 9 karat gold. In essence, you give a 9 karat gold in, and they will send it off to the purifiers, and they will separate out obviously the pure gold, the 24 karat gold from it, and they will charge you a fee per gram for the pure gold that is returned. So you can see here clearly that it is separable, available to the masses, this kind of process. So therefore, it does seem as though the 9 karat gold will be zakatable, though it will be zakatable at the rate of 9 carats, obviously not at the rate of 24 carats. So the weight of that jewelry you take into consideration at 9 karat gold value, and then you give in accordance to price per gram of 9 karat gold, as opposed to the 24 karat gold that you might have, which is obviously priced at the 24 karat gold rate. So obviously the price of the 9 karat gold will be lower, but it will be zakatable according to our latest research. And like I said, the popular mas'ala, the popular fatwa here, which may be by many may not have understood this research, or may not have come across this research. So this is the reason I'm stressing on this one quite a bit, because you may come across certain scholars who will not be aware of this and may not be accepting of this. But I've given you the logical understanding of this, why you can understand as to why this is the case, because the point is that the gold that is in that 9 karat jewelry, if you can separate it and that amounts to a nisab, if that amounts to a nisab where you can actually, then why will it not be zakatable? Why will it not be something which is making you rich enough to be paying zakat? Of course it will be. So you can understand here, logically understanding that if nisab can be taken out, derived from this gold, this 9 karat gold, obviously if it's only that gold, if there's other things, then why would it not be zakatable? So this is the ruling over here on 9 karat gold. Hopefully everyone's understood this. There are some muftiyan that have given lately have given fatwa on this opinion as well. So this is the fatwa that we go with here. Okay, continuing on, our next ruling that we will do regarding is a person is the zakat obligatory immediately on a person, or are they allowed to delay? And if they are allowed to delay, then how long? So there is a difference of opinion here, but the opinion that fatwa is given on is that the zakat is wajib, what we call wajib ala al-fawr, which means that it's wujub, the necessity of giving it is immediate. So a person must give their zakat as soon as it becomes wajib on them. If they delay, then the most we can say, because there is another opinion that in Bada'i it mentions, in Bada'i al-Sana'i it mentions that a person is allowed to delay up to 1 year. So because of that opinion, the most we can say is that we won't attach sin on the person until that 1 year is up. But because the fatwa opinion is it's wajib al-fawr, meaning immediately a person must give their zakat as soon as it becomes wajib, then a person should practice, should act upon this particular opinion, and we will not make a person sinful until the year is up. If the year goes by and the next year zakat becomes due now, then we can understand that the person is now sinful for delaying. So this is what we would say here, that a person should not delay, should pay their zakat immediately. Now, in a practical sense, what that then means is that you should try to give your zakat, either you discharge it yourself and then you've given it immediately to those who are recipients. Otherwise, if you give it to charities or people who are intermediaries in between, agents that are going to dispose of your zakat, who are going to distribute your zakat, then give it to charities who discharge the zakat immediately. There are many charities who actually mention that they would discharge the charity. They don't hold on to zakat, they give the zakat immediately, because this ruling is understood by majority of the charities. But if a charity is obviously holding on to the money, you've done your diligence, you checked this charity out and you've given your money to them, and now they're delaying, then the sin will not be on you, it will be on them for delaying. They should not have delayed. So this is the ruling regarding delaying of the payment of zakat. Are you allowed to delay or not? Next one we will do is zakat obligatory on haram wealth. If a person's got stolen wealth or interest-based income, money derived through alcohol or alcohol sales or drug sales, or winnings from gambling, national lottery, or anything like that. If a person has haram wealth, then what happens? So some people do think that this haram wealth I can purify by giving zakat from it. And if I give zakat, then the rest of the wealth will become purified. This is absolutely wrong. Okay, wrong concept. The haram wealth never even came into the person's possession. So if a person gains haram wealth, according to Sharia, that is not your wealth. That wealth belongs to somebody else. So if it's stolen wealth, that wealth still belongs to the person it was stolen from. So what must happen, it must be returned to the person it rightfully belongs to. Now, if certain wealth, which obviously cannot be returned, obviously if the person is not alive, then you have to pass it on to their rightful heirs. But if this wealth that cannot be returned, let's say for example a person's attained interest through the bank and they're not going to take that money back, or a person's for example derived money through other ways, other haram means, and they cannot return the money back for whatever reason, then the correct method of what to do, or the correct thing, what should be done with this money, is that money, that gained income, that has to be disposed of. That's the concept. That has to be disposed of. You have to give it away. Now, who do you give it away to? You give it away to the rightful recipients of zakat. So you give it to the poor, for example. You give it to the poor people, the rightful recipients of zakat, these charitable cause, you give it to them, and you dispose of it in this way. This is a disposal of this money. This is not a charity that you're giving. In essence, it's not something that you should consider a charitable thing that you're doing, so therefore you're gaining reward for it. That's not something that you should have an intention of. You cannot have an intention of having that haram money you're using it to do something which is a charity. So you should be disposing of that money without the intention, as they say, without the intention of reward, gaining reward through giving that money in charity. So you give that money over to the recipients of zakat, and that is, then you are rid of this money, and that's what should happen. Now, obviously, if a person has got this haram wealth mixed into their money, they're going to have to calculate how much this haram money was, haram income was, and they're going to have to give that, separate that out and give that away, and that will leave the rest of the money pure. That was attained through halal means, that is. So that is that. So we understand that zakat is not due on haram wealth, because that haram wealth never even came into one's possession. So that's that ruling. Now, the next ruling we would do is that can you give zakat on behalf of your spouse? So I think we covered this already in the lessons, that zakat, when giving zakat, the intention must be made from the person that's giving zakat. So if you're giving zakat on behalf of your spouse, make sure they know, make sure the intention is made by them. If there is a custom, meaning they already know implicitly that you give the husband gives zakat year in, year out, then that is already an intention. There's no need for renewal of intention every time or permission every single time. So that's that. Yeah, so hopefully this mas'ala is understood, that zakat can be given by the husband on behalf of his wife, or by the husband in behalf of anybody else really. But as long as the person you're giving zakat, by anybody, anyone can give zakat on anyone's behalf, as long as the person that zakat is being given on behalf of makes the intention, or knows at least that this person is giving my zakat, that would be their intention. That is that. Then one more ruling we'll cover now is zakat on shares. So the question is, how do you give zakat on shares? And is there zakat due on shares? So assuming that the shares are bought with a company which are dealing in halal, so that the shares are with the shares that are bought are halal in essence. So assuming that has happened, so you've done your checks and you've made sure, there are many websites available to check. There are, if you check certain websites, they will allow you to check that is this company meet the Shari'i requirements of being a company that is allowed to be invested in. So there are these websites that actually check these companies, and therefore if a person has checked and they see that this company has got the green light, go ahead, you can buy shares in this company. So if a person has bought shares like this now, so then there are two intentions a person generally would have. One is that you buy shares on a long term, you buy shares. Why? Because you want to attain dividends from these shares that you've bought. So if you buy shares to, in essence, earn dividends from, and your intention is, your primary intention, should I say, is not to sell the shares on. Eventually you would sell the shares, but your primary intention is to keep the shares and attain dividends year in, year out. Then there is no zakat on the value of the share. The zakat will be due on the zakatable assets of that company that you have shares with. So what that means is, if you have, let's say, 1% share in a certain company, that company, you have to look at their balance sheet. So you look at the balance sheet of that company and you try to work out what are the zakatable assets of this particular firm. So you see that they've got this much stock okay, and they've got this, so their assets, they add up to something, but certain assets of theirs will not be zakatable. So let's just say 60%, after you've worked it all out, we look at the balance sheets, which assets of theirs are actually zakatable. You see that 60% of their, their 60% you've worked out of their assets are actually zakatable. So once you work that out, then 1% that you own the share of, 1% of the 60% will be zakatable now. Not the whole 1% of the whole share, the total share value. So hopefully that makes sense, because the total share value will be higher. You only have to give zakat of the zakatable assets of that company. Because if you have stocks of a company, in essence you have stocks. You have stock in that company. Now you can understand a business that has a business, not everything is zakatable. Certain things will not be zakatable, and only things that will be generating an income and will fall under zakatable assets will be obviously zakatable. So this is something that you can do, and there is again online help on this available if a person does not understand this properly. But hopefully this gives us a concept, gives you a concept that shares that are brought with this kind of intention will not be zakatable. Some people are saying completely not zakatable at all, right? And you only pay zakat on the dividends. But what needs to be remembered here, our fatwa, what we say is that you own a share of the company itself. So if that company has zakatable assets, if that company didn't have no zakatable assets, they had no zakatable assets, then that's a different matter. But if that company has zakatable assets, then you own the amount of shares you have, that proportion of that stock. So you must give zakat on that. So that's important to remember there. And secondly, if a person buys shares with the intention of trading, so you're buying shares and you're selling, it goes up, you sell, you buy other shares that come down, and then a few days later, whatever it is, you sell. So you're a trader, you're trading in stocks. So then the total value of that stock will be given zakat of. Why? Because that stock is like, it's commoditized for you. That is actually money for you. That's a commodity. So you're buying a share, and that share fully is going to be sold by you. So therefore you are buying, in essence, goods, you're selling them. That's in essence how it would be considered. So therefore the full monetary value of that what you call the stock will be considered in your zakat. Now we go on to the mas'ala, the ruling regarding debts. So firstly, understand that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi categorizes debts into three groups. First is a strong debt, which we call the dayn qawi. So dayn qawi is that debt which has become liable in exchange of zakatable items. So that debt which becomes liable in exchange of zakatable items. So somebody owes you money. Why do they owe you money? They owe you money because you sold them your stock in your business. So you have a business, you sold them stock. Now that stock was zakatable. Yeah, so you sold them that stock, they owe you money. So this is a debt that's owed to you, which is liable in exchange of zakatable items. Okay, so this is going to be, or if you gave somebody a loan, you gave somebody money to borrow. Now that's owed to you in exchange of the zakatable item, the money that you gave to them. So this is what we call a strong debt. Now the ruling of this strong debt is that it's zakatable. This is the debt that somebody owes you. You have to pay zakat on that. Though they owe you money, you still have to pay zakat on it. So upon the anniversary, zakat anniversary, you will calculate that in your zakat. The only thing is, if a person feels as though they may not get this back, then they can delay the payment of this debt. So if I feel as though I've given money to somebody, but then I don't think they're going to give me back, then I'm allowed to delay the payment of that money. I don't have to give zakat on that until I get it back. Once I get it, once that person pays me, then I have to backdate the payments for all the years that I have missed. So let's say somebody owed me £1,000. If somebody owes me £1,000 and they gave it back after a few years, so then I have to give zakat for the first year that I didn't give zakat for. So £1,000, I have to give £25 zakat. Then the next year, that £1,000 has become now £975 because £25 out of that has been already given in zakat for that first year. So now the second year I had £975 left from there. So I calculate 2.5% of that, and like that you keep minusing the zakat from the total, and you give zakat of all the years that you've missed and not paid zakat for. So that's the ruling of the strong debt. Then next we have the medium or intermediate debt, which is what we call a dain mutawassit. So the dain mutawassit is a debt which has become liable in exchange of non-zakatable items. So the dain qawi was in exchange of zakatable items. This is in exchange of non-zakatable items. So for example, let's say I had a watch, my personal watch. I sold my watch. Now my watch is a personal watch. So if it's my personal watch which I'm using, it's not zakatable, right? It's not zakatable. Now when I sell it, then this person never paid me money. They still owe me that money. So it's a debt that's due to be paid to me, but in exchange of non-zakatable item. So that is an example of a medium debt. So, or if you give loans to somebody which is not in exchange of not cash, so anything like that, not in exchange of cash, not in exchange of gold, silver, merchandise. Yeah, so a loan given like that, and I gave you the example of it, like you sold somebody your phone, or you actually, let's say you did a service for somebody, you did some sort of service, you cleaned something for somebody, you painted something for somebody, and they owe you money. So now that money that's owed to you is in exchange of that service that you gave to them, which wasn't zakatable. Service is not zakatable. So this is a dain mutawassit, a dain which is the intermediary debt. Now, the ruling of this, there's a difference of opinion on. So some scholars say, and this is like kind of split in the middle, you can say, some scholars say that it's like the dain qawi, like I talked about already, which means that you have to pay for all the past years once you gain it. So that's the main difference, that upon the zakat anniversary, you have to pay zakat on it, and if you don't, you delay it, that's fine, but that's fine as long as you think you're not going to get it back. And if you do delay it, then you're going to have to pay for all the previous years once it comes into your possession. However, we go with the opinion of the other scholars who generally say that this is more like a dain da'if. So I'll explain what dain da'if is, then you'll understand the connection. So the last type of debt is the weak debt, the dain da'if. And this is a debt which is not become liable in exchange of any goods, or even it's not become in exchange of any zakatable, non-zakatable. It's just is not for not trade goods. So I'll give you an example. So for example, let's say you are owed money from the inheritance. So somebody passed away in the family, you are owed inheritance. Now that inheritance that you are owed is a dain that is due to be paid to you. It's a debt that's paid to be paid to you, but it's a weak debt because it's not in lieu of anything that you gave. Okay, it's not in exchange of anything. So that's inheritance, for example, or a bequest. Somebody bequest before they passed away for something to be given to you, and that has still not been given to you yet. So that's a loan, a debt that you are owed. Or let's say, for example, a husband did khul' with the wife, and the wife owes that payment for in exchange of that khul'. She hasn't paid yet. So that is again in exchange of nothing. He gave, it's not in exchange of any goods or anything like that. Likewise, if there was any Yeah, anything in this type of category, you can understand that this is going to be a dain da'if. Now, dain da'if, the ruling for this is that there is no zakat payable for the years that were, that it was not paid to you for. So there's no backdating here in essence. So you do not need to backdate any payments once you gain it. When you gain it, then you just add it into your nisab, you just add it in to your normal money at the lapsing of your year, the anniversary of your zakatable, zakatable year, then you will see how much you got left from there and you just give in accordance to that. So whatever you have. So that's how it works with dain da'if. So dain da'if is very simple. There's no backdating of any payments. So now we're generally saying that this medium debt, we're going to consider it to be like this dain da'if, which is not going to be zakatable for the back payments. The reason simple reason we can logically understand is because remember the medium debt, the intermediate debt, it's liable because it's an exchange of something which is non-zakatable item, right? So let's say, for example, I said to you, my watch I sold to somebody, but they haven't paid me yet. Now, my watch was not zakatable from the first place. It wasn't even zakatable. If I kept my watch, it was not zakatable. So now, if I've given my watch to that person, they haven't paid me yet, that money that they haven't paid me yet was in exchange of something which wasn't even zakatable. So why would that money, which hasn't even come into my possession yet, become zakatable? They will not be zakatable until I gain it. Once I gain it, then I'll start paying zakat on it from then onwards. So that's a logical understanding. You can see the difference between that and then the dain qawi was where the item was already zakatable. So when you gave that zakatable item to somebody and they haven't paid you yet, that item was already zakatable anyway. You had to pay zakat on that anyway. So you having to backdate payments and pay zakat on the years when you get that money eventually is fine, because if you had kept the item, you would have paid zakat on that anyway. So that's the point, the difference between the dain qawi, dain da'if, and the dain mutawassit in between. So hopefully this is understood in terms of the debts. So one more thing actually I'll just explain here is, so that's in regards to where somebody owes you, which debt would you consider in your zakatable assets? Now, what if you owe somebody? So if you are trying to actively pay off a loan that you've taken from somebody, and you're actually actively trying your best to pay everything off, the whole thing, then you can consider the whole amount, deductible. The whole amount is deductible. You can minus the whole amount. It's a liability for you. You owe this whole chunk of money to somebody and you are trying your best to pay off. So you're actively trying to pay off. Then we will say that you can deduct the whole amount as your liability and you can, you not pay zakat on that amount. However, if a person has some sort of payment plan, like they would do generally in mortgages and things like that, and the person does intend that I'm going to carry on sticking to the payment plan, then they can only minus 12 months, 1 year's worth of payments. There is an opinion that you can only minus 1 month's worth of this month's worth of payments only, but we give a bit more allowance. We say that 1 year's worth of payments because zakat is due from 1 year to another. So all the payments that are due this year, they are in essence immediate payments that need to be paid. The payments that need to be paid in the next year, that will be minus next year's payments in the next year's zakat. So therefore here we are deducting 1 year's worth of payments that are due. So that a person can do. As far as other debts are concerned, like phone bills and gas bills, electricity bills, and any other type of bills, then only those bills which have already become due. So if there's a phone bill that's become due already, then you can minus that because it's become due. But if there's up ahead, you know that there will be a bill for a service which you have not been yet provided. You haven't yet been provided a service. So therefore, technically, you do not owe that company any money because they haven't provided you the service yet. So therefore, that cannot be deducted because that is something which you do not owe yet. So this needs to be taken into consideration, what you can minus and what you cannot minus, deduct as a liability. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So just to summarize what we did today, we went through some notes which were to try to clarify further regarding commonly asked questions, FAQs you would like, regarding zakat nowadays. So we talked about giving zakat when you are calculating the value of your gold or your silver. Then you technically go by the value of that gold or that silver, which is the sale value of it, because that's the value that you can sell it at. But if a person takes the buy value, which is higher generally, then that's fine, it's up to them, no problem. Then we talked about 9 karat gold, that the 9 karat gold is zakatable, although it is zakatable at the 9 karat rate of gold. So the rate, the value of 9 karat gold, that the jewelry will be calculated in accordance to that, and zakat will be given of 9 karat gold. Then we mentioned regarding zakat, the obligation of zakat is al fawr, meaning that a person must give zakat immediately, not delay, and certainly not delay beyond the year. Then zakat on haram wealth, we talked about how haram wealth is not zakatable because that haram wealth has not even come into a person's possession, and that haram wealth must be given back to the rightful owner. And if a person cannot do so, then they must dispose of that haram wealth by giving it away to the poor, for instance. There is an opinion, some scholars have mentioned, that you can use this haram wealth for public welfare projects, but we generally don't give that ruling because that was a reading of a certain text, which after checking properly, we understand that that's not the context here. But yeah, some scholars have mentioned that the best and optimal thing would always be to give it away to the poor. So that's the reason we say this. Then we went through the husband is allowed to pay zakat on behalf of his dependents, or anybody really, in fact, is allowed to give on behalf of anybody as long as there's an intention from the person you pay on behalf of. So if the husband gives on behalf of the wife, that's fine, as long as she knows and she's made an intention that my husband is paying my zakat. And then we discussed regarding zakat on shares, how to work that out. I discussed that if there are 2 main types of shares that a person buys, one is with the intention of keeping so you can gain dividends from it, that's the primary intention, even if the secondary intention was eventually to sell it, but the primary intention is what's considered here. So there will be no zakat on the share value, but zakat will be given on the zakatable assets of of that company that you have shares with, proportionate to the amount of shares you have with that company. You give zakat on that. And likewise, any dividends you gain, you put it into your pot in essence. And at the elapse of the year, if there's anything left, obviously you give zakat on the zakat anniversary. And the second type of share was the share bought with the intention of selling, primary intention of selling. So you're trading with their shares. So there you would have to give zakat on the whole value of that share. And lastly, I also discussed regarding the debts, different types of debts, the dain qawi, which you backdate payments for, dain mutawassit, and dain da'if, which you do not backdate payments for. And lastly, any debts that are, any loans that you've taken out, debts that you owe to somebody else, you can deduct them as long as your intention, strong intention, active intention is to pay fully off. If you're paying off in a certain amounts only with a payment plan, then you can only minus this year's worth of payments.